You're listening to the Labor Notes podcast, the weekly show from Labor Notes on rank and file news and organizing tactics. I'm pod co-host Natasha Eleni Yulman, a staff writer at Labor Notes.
And I'm Danielle Smith, a staff organizer at Labor Notes. We've got a special episode for you today where we'll feature some of the stories that two organizing leaders shared recently at a webinar our coworker Lisa Shu and I put together called Building Power Through Coordinated Bargaining and Contract Alignment. If you missed it or wanted a recap of some of their big takeaways, you're in luck. Today we're going to hear directly from Francisco Ortiz, president of United Teachers of Richmond in California, and Chris Spurlock, a steward in Teamsters Local 135 at Zenith Logistics, which is a third-party operator for Kroger, speaking to folks at that panel.
Francisco Ortiz, who's a member of the California Teachers Association, talked about the We Can't Wait campaign, which Danielle wrote about back in May. That's a campaign that started with 11 locals that set out to align their contract expirations, and they're organizing to get strike ready this fall. To hear more about Danielle's reporting on that, you can check out that episode, which is titled 77,000 California Educators Are Joining Forces. We posted that one on June 13th. It's a great listen, so check it out, but the top line is that the California Teachers Association has aligned contracts covering 77,000 members across 32 locals. That's a quarter of the CTA's membership.
Yeah, and Chris Spurlock, the Teamsters 135 steward, shared about 3 Teamsters locals that have coordinated bargaining against their shared employer Zenith. Those 3 locals are Indiana Local 135, Louisville Local 89, and Cincinnati Local 100. Those are the places where Zenith operates facilities for the grocery giant Kroger. Teamsters reformers at Teamsters for a Democratic Union, the Reform Caucus in the Teamsters, are helping to organize that coordination.
Some of the big themes we'll be highlighting here are the different extents to which these campaigns have coordinated their efforts, how those efforts originated, how they navigated transparency and communication with members and opened up bargaining, how they came up with common demands across locals, and how they organized coordinated actions with members from other locals and units. Why don't we start with some context from Francisco and Chris about how their coordination came together?
Great idea. Here's Francisco on the We Can't Wait campaign.
For us, the decision came from, years of frustration, watching our district's coordinated messaging around austerity and layoff cuts year after year, while, we were negotiating in isolation. And so through the California Alliance for Community Schools, which is a core set of 12 locals, we recognized that our contracts all expired in 2025. And so we were committed to align our bargaining demands according to the set timelines. For UTR members, it's powerful to know that we're not alone, that we're joined with nearly 80,000 other educators representing, 1 million students in California. And so we're really empowered by that collective power that really raises the stakes for our districts and gives our members a real sense of momentum and solidarity, knowing that the issues that are impacting our students and members are not just siloed in West Contra Costa, but they're felt throughout the state and our education system.
And here's Chris talking about the organizing at Zenith.
So in 2022, a new slate came in and went for election at the Union Hall. It's 135 members first. And what they did is they wanted open bargaining. They wanted transparency brought back to the union. So with ours being Kroger, when I started back in 1995, Kroger had a master contract for all the Kroger stores. And then you had a local. Well, they ended up third partying us out in 98, Indianapolis, Louisville, and Cincinnati, and became Zenith Logistics. With that, the dates of their contracts, we were no longer under the master, but the dates of the contracts were different. So ours is up in October, Louisville's was up in January. So we wanted to try and get those more together. So that way we can try and treat it almost like the Kroger master contract. So when you strike one, you can strike them in a domino effect with all the contracts expiring around the same time. So we have been working together to do the coordinated on that.
It was really cool to hear these real examples of how creative coordination can really boost workers' leverage against their employer or employers.
Yeah, and also to learn more about what the process was actually like in building these levels of coordination. I really liked what Francisco had to say about how they developed demands for the We Can't Wait campaign and talked to members about contract alignment.
We really started by building deep relationships, not only amongst our core locals, but we really wanted to develop trust through past campaigns that we already had embarked on and we've been fighting for. So passing AB 1505 in California, which brought greater transparency and accountability for charter schools. And additionally, how we all rallied around Proposition 15, which would close the corporate tax loopholes and provide between $6 to $11 billion in funding for schools and community colleges. Although we weren't successful in that campaign, that really really honed in on the real issue, which is the chronic underfunding of our public education system. And so, we really moved towards shared planning. We developed some platforms, surveys that went out to our executive board, our representative councils, and to our general membership so that we could really understand what were the very core issues that are impacting our members' working conditions and our students' learning conditions. And so we wanted to ensure that we had statewide alignment that really reflected our local realities as well. So with members, we really emphasized that alignment wasn't just symbolic, right? It's really a strategic focus point on what's going to be necessary to improve the conditions for learning and to ensure that our profession is a profession that is not only valued in words, but actually something that is an investment for our continued for our continued not only just survival for our education system, but for our education system to thrive. And so we wanted to also have coordinated escalation so that we could really leverage our collective bargaining power as we moved on throughout the campaign. So it's not just district by district wins, but a real win for the entire state in our system.
Both Francisco and Chris really emphasized how important it was to be transparent with members, and they both talked about how open or expanded bargaining helped strengthen their campaigns. Here's Chris talking about open bargaining in Local 135.
Out of the Zenith, we have Zenith Indianapolis, but Kroger actually came in and took over their third-party operation for their cold storage, so they're back to a Kroger facility. So last year, our head steward sat in on their negotiations so they could see what Kroger was doing for that side. But with it being open and bargaining, what happened is myself and another steward, when we got off work every day, we would go down and sit in on their negotiations. And it's not so much as learning because they're a different facility. It's about showing other members that you're there to support them. So that was on the Kroger side. Now, when we went to our contract, we had Trey McCutcheon, which was the BA from Louisville, come up and sit up on ours. We also had Brady and his head steward came up and sat in on our negotiations. So what that did is it opened up to all three sides to see what the company was willing to do. But also all of our members were able to come into every negotiation date from the time it started, and then they could stay all night long. So at one point we had over 80 members sitting in a room watching the bargaining process. And what this does is a lot of times the company will go back to your facility and say, hey, the union is unwilling to move on this, or they're unwilling to move on that. Well, with the open bargaining, that takes that completely off the table. Now everybody can sit in there and they can watch exactly what the company is willing to give you and what they're not willing to give you. So it really opens up everybody's eyes. And then the great thing is if somebody left, our president didn't believe on having an empty seat at the table, he would actually let one of the members come up and sit at the table on our bargaining side. So that way we always had a full table. So it really made them feel involved in the whole process, which is really key when they go back into the warehouse.
Chris also talked a bit about the role of member education, which they were able to do with help from Teamsters for a Democratic Union, and how they were able to build relationships across locals.
So with ours, we have a great organization that's been helping us. It's called TDU. It's a Teamsters for Democratic Union. And they've been doing great educational classes. We've had them at 135. We just had one down at Cincinnati a few weeks ago, and then they've had it in Louisville. And what it does is it helps build that relationship, gives you the tools that you need to build the coordinated bargaining, explain some of what it's about. And like one of the things that TDU helped do was like this was our button that we did for like one of the days. We had everybody in the warehouse wore this button. So management saw it. Some people may wear buttons, shirts, a hat, but when you do that, then the company really sees that, you're making a stand. And when you have those educational seminars through TDU, you're able to build relationships with the other locals. Like right now, when I had the union stewards from Local 89, Local 100 come up, or if I went down to theirs, I've got all the union stewards from all three different Zenith sites in a group text message. So that way, if anything does happen, we can let everybody else know at the other two sites.
And Francisco had some good advice for workers who are thinking about coordination and contract alignment.
I would suggest, starting early, start by building relationships. It's difficult to align strategy if you don't align trust first. So having that as a foundation, sharing or developing shared standards, but respecting one's local autonomy. One thing I think that has been supportive of our campaign is really developing these cross-local communication and organizing, not just leadership coordination. The cross-local bargaining teams have been, I think, useful in terms of identifying what the employer is saying is not just indicative of West Contra Costa. Additionally, one thing that was that came up during this campaign is really being prepared for potential employer coordination and austerity narratives, and really being prepared to counter that with shared research and media as well. So when we went public during our campaign, you saw a Wall Street Journal article saying that teachers, get paid way too much. And then we saw a bunch of tweets from Elon attacking educators. And so be prepared for some counterattacks as well. And, you don't have to do everything at once. Go at the speed of trust. Start with one aligned action or a demand and build from there.
I thought these were such great examples of how workers are finding ways to build relationships, expand trust and transparency in their unions, and scale up their organizing. And we know these are also questions that people are taking up as they consider United Auto Workers President Shawn Fain's call to unions to build their readiness for a strike on May Day 2028, which we also touched on in the panel.
So in thinking of the, May Day 2028 call, it could be our generation's real moment for a coordinated public sector uprising. The campaign that we're currently on really shows the power of aligning and synchronizing contract fights and organizing in advance. And given all of the things that are happening at the national level, May Day 2028 seems so far away, and we need to be organizing for like tomorrow, May Day 2026, as closest to it. But really thinking about how we're gonna our contracts are gonna converge and expire in May Day 2028. How do we scale up site-based leadership development now? I had the opportunity to join the May Day convening in Chicago last week, and it was really inspiring to see so many folks, not only from the education sector, but also from community-based organizations who are really seeing this as an opportunity for us to build in community with our grassroots organizations. And so building that bridge that may have been either in the development or sometimes even ruptured between organized labor and community-based organizing as an opportunity for us to build up shared demands for the attacks on workers, the attacks on our most vulnerable communities, the attacks on public education, to really bring, May Day 2028 as a rallying cry for all folks who not only defend and uphold public education as a right for all people, but also increasing, the right messaging for worker dignity in this country, which, workers all around the country are being exploited by the billionaire agenda. And so having that as a, people over billionaires call seems like a really great opportunity for us to send a collective message with consequence.
A participant in the chat also pointed out something interesting, that even if you can't always align contracts, you can negotiate a side letter allowing for strikes with a political motivation, like workers in SEIU 1021 did.
Yeah, and another attendee noted in the chat that you also don't necessarily need to align contract expiration dates to coordinate. You can also line things up by working under an expired contract. They mention examples from copper producers and Campbell soup workers in the 1960s.
We also got to hear from Francisco and Chris about some of the impact the campaigns have had on members. For instance, here's what Francisco had to say when asked what surprised him the most about the campaign.
For us, one of the things that was the most surprising was really seeing our members' ability to mobilize and utilize our site structures to coordinate big actions. So at the end of the school year, we had pickets across 54 school sites. So 53 out of them did pickets before or after school to really bring attention to not only management's unresponsiveness at the bargaining table, but also the crisis that our schools are under, right? We don't have the adequate staffing to support over 100 vacancies across our sites, and the folks who are hit hardest with those conditions are our students and our educators who are showing up to support them every single day. And so our members are really fired up. They're willing to start the school year with a renowned and fired attitude to continue to fight because we're really at a crisis point here in West Contra Costa. 18th out of 19th in the entire county in terms of pay. We pay the most in healthcare contributions, and so we're losing a lot of really talented educators to other districts. And so we want to ensure that we have a contract that really values the folks that are not only willing to show up, but are going to attract some new educators, which our students absolutely deserve.
Yeah, and Chris had this to say about how he's seen their membership change.
So for me at our local, it used to be when I started 30 years ago, the monthly meetings, the whole union hall would be full of Teamsters from all different locals. But over the years, as they felt that the members were not being represented, it dwindled down to where you get maybe 3 or 4 people showing up at a monthly meeting. Ever since 135 slate came in 2022, you have a full union hall at the monthly meeting now. You have people calling in to the union hall asking if they are needed anywhere on a strike line, or just asking in general if there's any education coming up at the local that they can come and do. So what you have is because they don't really teach about unions anymore in schools, but now you have people the amazing thing is we saw a probationary girl come in on our contract negotiations. Somebody that didn't even have a full-time job yet showed up to contract negotiations. And that says a lot. When you got people that have 20, 30 years in there not showing up, somebody that's only been there a month, believing in what's happening and the change that's happened, it's really amazing to see. And it's good to see people are joining now that refuse. So Indiana's a right to work state. So at my warehouse, we are actually 100% and have been the whole time I've been there. But in other warehouses, they're not, but you see them joining more and more every day because they believe in what the union is now. So that's part of the changes that I'm seeing.
Big thanks to Francisco and Chris for sharing their insights and experience with us. That's our episode. Don't miss our next workshop, a stewards workshop coming up on Monday, August 18th. One, I'll be heading on the topic of running effective meetings. And it's not too early to sign up for our next Secrets of a Successful Organizer training, which is a core labor notes training we run every 3 months. It's on Mondays, September 8th, 15th, and 22nd. You can sign up at labornotes.org/events.
Please rate us or leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. If you're listening to us on Podbean at labornotespodcast.podbean.com, download our episode. The Labor Notes Podcast is produced by Daniel Smith, Sindhu Sundar, and myself. Our title music was written and performed by our coworker, Keith Brower Brown. See you next week. Solidarity, y'all.